It's 3 a.m. You're in a helium headspace. It's Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. It's the 20th anniversary of the release of Serenity, written and directed by Joss Whedon. Starring Gina Torres, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Alan Tudyk, and Nathan Fillion, who, as Maul says, I aim to misbehave. Adjusted for inflation, it made $16.4 million its opening weekend and has since accumulated $66 million. Born this day in 1905, director Michael Powell grew into the English half of The Archers, the partnership with Emmerich Pressburger that poured color, music, and mischief into British cinema. The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus shimmered like fever dreams, then Peeping Tom arrived years later like a live wire that shocked critics and nearly sank his career before later generations, Martin Scorsese among them, hauled it back to the pantheon. What ties these films together isn't just the lush technicolor or melodious editing. It's Powell's steady belief that art is an absolute, a calling that asks for everything and then asks again. Michael Powell said, all art is one thing, man's expression of himself, and the struggle for light and truth is the same in any medium. On this day in 1207, in the city of Balkh, then part of the Persian world and now in Afghanistan, Jalal al-Din Rumi was born, a man whose words still find their way across centuries and cultures. A Sufi mystic and poet, Rumi spent his life pointing beyond surface appearances, urging his listeners and readers toward an experience of divine love that was at once deeply personal and universally human. His great work, the Masnavi, is an epic poem of 6 books often called the Quran of Persia, blending parables, philosophy, and religious reflection into a guide for spiritual seekers. Yet his influence extends far past his faith tradition. In the West today, his poetry has been translated more than any other poet, admired for its piercing honesty and its plain insistence that the human heart longs for connection. He was not a philosopher in an ivory tower, but a man who saw the struggle and wonder of ordinary life as fertile ground for meeting the eternal. Rumi, who once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." Truman Capote was born today in New Orleans in 1924 and grew up to become one of America's most distinctive literary voices. Known for his sharp wit and a talent for observation that cut to the bone, Capote blurred the line between fiction and reporting. His novel Breakfast at Tiffany's turned a young New York socialite into a cultural icon, while In Cold Blood pioneered the nonfiction novel, recounting a Kansas murder case with a novelist's eye for character and scene. He lived as much in the headlines as on the page, openly flamboyant in an era when few dared, and simultaneously admired and resented for his brilliance. By the time of his death in 1984, Capote had reshaped American literature and celebrity culture, leaving behind a legacy that was both glamorous and haunted. Truman Capote, who said life is a moderately good play with a badly written third act. It's the birthday of the man who said, the poem is not a thing we see, it is rather a light by which we may see. William Stanley Merwin was born in New York City in 1927, and across his 91 years, he became one of the most distinctive American voices in poetry. Merwin's career stretched over 6 decades, moving from formal verse in his early days to a stripped, unpunctuated style that seemed to mirror his devotion to clarity and silence. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize twice and served as U.S. Poet Laureate, but what marked him most was a lifelong reverence for the natural world. Living much of his later life in Hawaii, he turned a barren patch of land into a thriving palm forest, an act that reflected the same patience and quiet persistence that filled his verse. Merwin's poetry asks us not to look at him, but to look more carefully at what surrounds us: light, memory, loss, and the fragile ground we all stand upon. Elie Wiesel was born today in 1928 in Sighet, a small town that was then part of Romania, unaware that his life would become a testimony to both humanity's darkest depths and its stubborn resilience. As a teenager, he was deported with his family to Auschwitz and later Buchenwald, experiences that marked him forever. His memoir Night, first published in 1956, stripped away any illusion of safety in the face of unchecked hatred and became one of the most widely read accounts of the Holocaust. Wiesel spent the rest of his life writing, teaching, and speaking, insisting that to forget victims is to kill them a second time. He once said the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Awarded the Nobel Prize in 1986, he used his platform not to dwell in despair, but to urge vigilance and compassion. His voice carried the weight of tragedy, but also the insistence that we can choose a different path. Today in 1935, Shamsur Rahman Farooqi was born in Uttar Pradesh, India, and would grow to become one of the most influential voices in modern Urdu literature. Farooqi was not only a poet, but a novelist, critic, and scholar who revitalized classical traditions while fearlessly engaging with modern forms. He said, "Tradition is not a chain to bind us, but a foundation to stand upon." His magnum opus, The Mirror of Beauty, painted a sweeping portrait of 19th century Mughal India through the eyes of a woman navigating art, politics, and personal longing. Farooqi acted as a bridge between the old and the new. He revived the high aesthetics of the Urdu ghazal, a 7th century poetic form, while subjecting them to rigorous modern critical standards. His work often stood at the intersection of beauty and intellect, reminding readers that literature is not just about entertainment, but about shaping cultural memory and understanding. And those are some of the things we humans have done over the years. Do the useful thing, say the courageous thing, contemplate the beautiful thing. That is enough. Please follow, like, and subscribe.